stage. Now, the one we're going to focus on today is around distribution, and it's made up of 9 sort of elements. So it's a bit like a pick and mix of being able to choose the elements that are relevant for your particular project. But they're all designed to enhance the functionality of your standard Sage solution. So, and of course, every customer's got different requirements. So what we'll do is we'll just quickly run down the list, but actually I'm going to do it in a slightly different order. The ones which customers would typically take over and above the others. Some are more specific for perhaps the industry that you're in. But as I say, they're designed to enhance the existing Sage functionality. So one of the first ones that we'll focus on would be future sales. So there's 2 sides to this. The first side is actually looking at historical usage. So for a lot of customers, the question that comes to us is, how do we ensure that we've got enough stock coverage for the sales as they come in? Now, of course, forecasting is one of those dark arts, so the system's not going to be able to predict what's necessarily going to happen in the future, but we can look at historical usage. You can enter a date range for seasonality to then be able to advise as to whether or not you should change that minimum level. And the minimum level then for your stock items for each warehouse is the float that you should always be up to. There's actually another side to it as well, which we added in the last release in October, which takes the sales, but again, it's usage, so it could be works orders if you're in a manufacturing environment using a Sicon manufacturing, but it's taking the historical figures over the last 12 months, doing some analysis, and then predicting potentially what sales and dropping that into a manual forecast. So that's really the first part, and it's just all about analysing the data. That then is really complemented by the material planning. So what material planning does is it looks at the big picture of all your stock, so your opening free stock, your future stock movements, so any sales orders that have got demand, any purchase orders that should be coming in and when they're going to come in. So your balance is going up and down. It's essentially looking at what point you may or may not drop below that minimum level, and then what should you order to bring it back up to that level. But it's doing all of that analysis and then sharing that with you to make those decisions rather than you running off reports and having to farm for it. So certainly those 2 are very, very popular. The next one, certainly since kind of the evolution of Brexit, but a lot of organizations now bringing containers in from across Europe or the Far East, is the container management module, and that's one that really raises a lot of interest. So what this does is you can add tracking profiles both to the PO but also to the container, but a way of being able to update the individual lines if the container is going to be delayed. So again, giving you visibility of that, but also having an impact, so updating any of the lines on there. So when we run material planning, again, this is where it all sort of complements each other. You're going to get warnings then of items that may not arrive in time, so you can then decide how you're going to deal with it. So certainly those 3, as I say, would be the most popular. The one after that then would be pre-allocation management. So the idea here is you've got your purchase orders, they might be out on the sea or wherever they are. You've got a customer on the phone, you haven't got any stock, and you may or may not have found yourself in a situation where, oh, actually, yeah, we've got a purchase order coming in. So the customer's, that's great, get it next Thursday. All of your salespeople doing what you want salespeople to do and promising this because of what the visibility they've got. Purchase order comes in, and then all of a sudden it's a free-for-all allocating, and that customer you promised 2 weeks ago has missed the boat essentially. So pre-allocation management allows you to pre-allocate to those purchase orders before they arrive. So essentially ring fencing stock. So the free stock on those purchase orders goes down, and again, material planning is going to be taking that into consideration when you run it. But as you get to receive it, it then, as it's booked in, automatically allocates the appropriate order. So being able to also then manage that centrally. We've then got purchase order management, and we've got sales order management as well. So these are just some tools for your SOP and your POP side. So from the sales orders, this is adding some additional buttons for telesales functionality. So again, a lot of customers like the rapid order entry, but the downside to it is you don't get some of the granularity. So we've added some buttons on there, copy sales order lines as well. From the purchase order side is an extended landed costs. That tends to be the big one from there. So Sage has a single landed cost nominal. We can actually split it out into 6. So again, we'll look at that, as well as supplier quantity breaks, which again complement the material planning. Reserves and call-offs. Really, this is all about sales or purchase contracts. Sometimes you call them blanket orders. Again, it's for the type of customers who would negotiate with their supplier, we will buy 1,000 of an item over the next 6 months, and it's being able to track that. Now, what they'll do is you'll put them on as purchase orders, and then you'll have them as we'll take 1,000 in September, 1,000 in October, etc. But the problem is when you start to combine that with material planning, is the system then looks and says, actually, no, you've got enough stock to cover it. But that's not really a true picture, because you don't know when you need to place that PO, essentially call off that order to have any coverage, because it's just not going to be visible. So what we do there is you can have these contracts or these blanket orders. It's a way of recording those details as you place purchase orders for those stock items from that supplier, for example. It's then updating what you've received so far, so you've got the balance to be able to report on. But as you add the orders, material planning then is just suggesting what you need to order and when. Warehouse replenishment is a lot of the time it might be the terminology consignment management. So where you're holding your stock in a customer's warehouse, of course you need to know what to replenish. So it's a standard Sage warehouse, which is probably how you're handling it at the moment. But the idea here is looking at the minimum levels for those warehouses, looking at what stock you've got in your main warehouse and what should you transfer, generating that transfer, allowing you to pick and dispatch in warehouse number 1, for example, move that stock into in transit so it's still visible, but then receive it in the other warehouse. So just a way of being able to control that. And then the final one, which always save to the end, but again, it's not last but not least, but I think this one's quite specific. It was designed for a client originally in the footwear industry. So what you end up with is they've got a new design. So of course you've got the various different sizes, you've got the different colors, perhaps even widths for those items. So it's creating those stock items, but then for the sales team, as they're putting them on, there's a matrix, and they can just say, I need 3 of the brown size 5s, I need 2 of the I don't know, blue suede size 11s, and then adding those individual lines to the sales order.